Hi to everyone. I'm Giorgio Fedon, Chief Operation Officer and Technical Director at Minded Security. And today talk, we'll talk about the nasty side effects of client-side attacks. In particular, I will talk about malware. This is a very short disclaimer about the today's presentation because my opinion, of course, expressed in this presentation are about the author. About myself, I'm a technical director at Minded Security. I'm a board member of OWASP Italy. OWASP Italy is an open web application security project, and is a non-profit organization for software security. I've been a penetration tester during the last 10 years, and I love to find and exploit software vulnerabilities. So I'm also been a code reviewer, so during my daily time job I look at the code and at the binaries of software programs to find vulnerabilities inside and reporting vulnerabilities ethically to the vendors. Malware definition. Before starting with more insights about malware, malware is an umbrella term that defines many kind of viruses, worms, Trojan horses, ransomware, spyware, and can be in the form of executable code, scripts, active content, and other software. So this is a courtesy of Secure List. This is a beautiful image where we can find Bubba, the POS frauder, Hippo, the ransomware, Wally, the banker, Blackie, the Bitcoiner, and in the middle, our friend Gino, that is the user that is not aware of all the threats he is going to find during his daily time browsing the internet hours job. Common malware features are about to keep a control on the user. It can alt damage the user or data or accounts, but the principal aspect of malware is that is running on user devices without his explicit user consent. This means that even if the user clicks on something, it doesn't know exactly that this piece of software is going to damage his own data or his own life in some way. Because why nasty effects of malware are reflecting on user life? Because malware can encrypt this information and ask for a ransom, so a monetary rewards to the attacker for having the user to get back his information unencrypted. It can rob user bank accounts. Malware have been prominently used to defraud the user bank accounts or getting and harvesting credit cards from the users. This kind of malware are called banker or POS malwares. POS stands for point of sales malware. And of course it can spy on the user. This kind of malwares are spyware or APT. APT is our kind of spyware, but is an acronym for Advanced Persistent Threats that are in somehow related to targeted attacks. So APT are targeting specific users and not are going to do the same thing across a larger audience. Motivation to write malware has changed during time, and we can find 4 main reasons that authors are writing malware. The first one was pure research. 29 authors, 29A was a very important virus research group in the 90s. One of the authors wrote Kabir. The author was Valles. It was the first mobile virus. And he made that for proving that guys who coded the state-of-the-art to make the world more secure. That virus did nothing else than replicate itself. Other authors are doing that for notoriety. I'll be cool. So in 2001, love bug worm case, so CNN hacking into the mind of virus writer told that the author did that for notoriety. Ideology. Several websites run the NATO alliance have been knocked offline from a pro-Russian activist group. And of course, the main reason to write malware nowadays is business. Now malware is a criminal business. These are a summary of prominent criminal activities during time. From 1995, we can find threat actors like Lloyd, Omega, and threat actors against AT&T. Then we find the Guzman with the I love you virus I was talking before, Mafia Boy, DDoS attack against Yahoo. But these attacks were rising, and the damages cost were rising during time. Very important was the attack that Gonzalez gang did against TJ Maxx. TJ Maxx was a very big shop chain in the United States and other countries. And they were being able to target their payment system that was Heartland Payments. Heartland Payments was a very large, the third largest payment system in the United States. And by targeting one of their main servers, they have been able to harvest it, literally throwing out of the window hundreds of millions of credit cards. So, how did the Gonzalez gang did that? He used a chain attack with different subjects. One was from Russia, and the guy from Russia hacked into the Heartland payment system. Then they used a malware made from a formal Morgan Stanley employee named Unix terrorist in the hacking community, that wrote this malware that was a rootkit that was inside the servers and harvesting the data. Of course, malware even was more sophisticated afterwards, and we find extremely sophisticated malware like POS malware. So, to summary, malware in 1995, the side effects were system and data loss system killers. In the 2000, we found especially worm and mailers, and the side effects was denial of service. In 2005, we have seen a big rising of the spam bots. So there is also Spam House list of biggest spammers around the world. We find the hardware business and so on. In 2010, bankers, financial, APT, the use of 0 days in exploit kits. 0 days are vulnerabilities that have been not patched or known before that are abused to exploit, so take advantage of a software vulnerability. Software vulnerability is a flaw that an attacker can use to penetrate into a system. In 2005, what we see is an advanced automation and the chain use of attacks to penetrate into systems. So we see ransomware, financial fraud, Bitcoin, point-of-sale fraud made through malware and chain attacks. What is a chain attack? Chain attack is an attack trend that is evolving and is the use of multiple techniques to breach a target and afterwards install a malware. They start with the penetration testing. They find and exploit afterwards network software vulnerabilities. After that, they install malware or worms to escalate privileges in the internal network, because before installing things, they breach the network and they put a step on into the network before installing malware inside, because it's easier to install malware inside the network and propagate it from the inside. And then, of course, they place malware. But before that, they start with the penetration testing the external websites. How they can penetration test external websites? There are websites that, for example, are like this one. Shodan.io is a cloud service that scans the complete internet every month, so you can see all around the world vulnerable targets. For example, here you can see exposed webcams with a specific server. If you would like to check for your preferred target, for example, you have seen that on one public repository there are specific vulnerabilities that have been out that are targeting an important or very used system, you can then check on Shodan where these systems actually are. Because, for example, you can check for a specific server. So you can check for example, because we are talking about this later, let me check if the connection is working. As you can see, I've just made a search in real time worldwide to check the availability of JBoss server. For example, here you can see JBoss servers. We know that in the United States there are 13,000 exposed JBoss servers and so on. All this information are public, so you can refine your target upon what you are actually looking for. Before I was talking about ATM malware. What is an ATM malware? This is one of the most sophisticated ATM malware that was discovered by Kaspersky Labs in 2014. Here the attackers have breached the internal ATM network and then they install the malware inside the ATM. After that, they can enter a specific code and they can control the money inside of the ATM. So they installed the malware because they breached the internal network. They used the default credential inside the machine because ATM, if I ask you which operating system are using the ATMs, anybody knows about this? They can use a Windows 2000, they can use Windows XP, they can use, but most of the time they use unpatched Windows systems. So if the hackers have a sophisticated malware, they can write something that stays on the POS, and if they know which ATM have been successfully targeted, they can write something that if you write the correct code, they spit out all the money inside the ATM without being detected. So another very interesting chain attack was targeting CCTV system. What is a CCTV system? It's the system that monitors your webcams or cameras. CCTV is a recording device, but the recording device is running an operating system with a lot of custom software inside it. So custom softwares can have vulnerabilities. What you see, this is a CCTV system that is monitoring a Windows-based point-of-sale system. The attackers found out in 2014, a security company found that backoff malware was installed on over 1,000 United States businesses. Attackers were exploiting a flaw in a TVT rebranded CCTV system to install the malware in the internal network point of sales, because CCTV systems are exposed to the internet. Malware breached the CCTV systems, then after that they used the CCTV system to get into the point of sale. So they stepped on by infecting the Windows machines running the point of sale servers. So when someone steals your credit card, it could not be your fault. So probably you are using your credit card on a system that have been previously infected. So when you rent a car and someone enters the credit card on their system, if they are browsing the internet without protection, they could infect the machines, for example, or someone can infect those machines. So another very large threat is ransomware. What is ransomware? Ransomware is a kind of threat that in exchange of money gives back your unencrypted files. So before it encrypts your files, it exchanges a cryptographic key with attackers, and the attackers want a reward for giving back your clear text files. Usually the preferred currency is Bitcoin because it's very difficult to trace, but they are also moving to Litecoin or other very difficult to trace digital currency. This is the captive portal of Cryptolocker that asks for the Bitcoin for being to decrypt your files. There are different kinds of ransomware. There is the ransomware that spread usually via email attachments or browser-based exploits. What is an email attachment? Email attachment is a file that someone sends you, like a document that you click on and you open it in Word, for example. Browser-based exploits are ways to install something just by attacking your browser, like Internet Explorer, Firefox. You go to a website. This website finds a way to install something without even that the users know about that, because the web page executes something that installs directly the ransomware. Ransom are from $100 to $1,000. But the new trend is SSR ransomware. SSR stands for server-side ransomware. It spreads via server-side exploits, like the one I showed you before, and no human intervention could be even needed, like in the Cryptolocker ransomware that was targeting, for example, Synology. Do you know Synology? Yeah, Synology is a consumer electronics network access storage that was targeted in 2014 by a server-side ransomware that was spreading around the internet by taking advantage of a Synology vulnerabilities of 2013. So users that did not patch their Synology setup were vulnerable to this kind of threat. Breaking news in February 2016. This is another nasty side effect to users affected by malware. The rise of server-side ransomware against hospitals. Hackers demanded up to $3.7 million, or the equivalent to 9,000 bitcoins in ransom, and they made 700 urgent surgical operations delayed just in Los Angeles City, in the Hollywood Hospital. So this is a very nasty side effects of malware, because urgent surgical operations have been delayed. This was not just the effect of server-side ransomware. There was still Loki malware that was not server-side, but in March, 10 MedStar medical facilities have been blocked by a server-side ransomware.
This morning, the FBI is trying to figure out if medical data was stolen from the largest hospital system in Baltimore. MedStar has confirmed that hackers broke in yesterday. ABC 2 News' Brendan McNamara joins us live from Union Memorial Hospital with how they may have done it. Brendan?
Well, Ashley, investigators say that the hackers may have been after money or they may have been after the data itself, and that's what they're looking into right now. Union Memorial is one of 10 hospitals, MedStar hospitals here in Baltimore, all of which started reporting something wrong with their systems on Monday morning. MedStar says that the hackers installed a virus onto the network, which forced record systems offline for thousands of patients and doctors. Now, cybersecurity experts say if the hackers were after stealing data, they probably got it, but the FBI says it's looking into whether they were using something called ransomware, which knocks records offline and will only bring them back online in return for payment.
The general rule of thumb is the price to pay for ransomware is so cheap compared to having somebody come in and do an instant response and forensics that almost every company I spoke to just paid the ransomware.
And there is a recent example in California of a hospital paying up to $17,000 to get their record systems back online in a similar ransomware attack. MedStar says that all of its facilities are up and running right now, but on a pen and paper backup system. Ashley.
So, how they were able to do this? They have been using a new ransomware named SamSam or SAMS that was exploiting a vulnerable JBoss application server by using Jaxbox. And the very incredible thing is that they were using CVE 2010-0738. This vulnerability was patched in 2010 and ethically reported to JBoss Red Hat. After exploiting this vulnerability, the attackers got remote shell access to the infected servers. They installed the SamSam ransomware onto the targeted web application servers. So how they knew that there was a vulnerable JBoss server? They were using systems like the one I showed you before. They were searching for the vulnerable version of JBoss, and they found it exposed on the internet. Why JBoss is so used by hospitals? Because JBoss is an open source application server. Application servers are the servers that have the business logic inside them. They are using JBoss to store, for example, medical records and users and data of the medical patients. After installing SamSam onto the targeted web application servers, they used other information stealing malware to get network information and user credentials on the systems, because JBoss many times runs in Windows system as the NT authority privilege, so the highest privilege in the system. So it's very easy to step on with the further attacks. And after that, they have been deployed this malware to other systems inside the network with Microsoft PS exec that lets, with the correct credentials, to install a file to remote systems. CVE 2010-0738 is a HTTP verb tampering authorization bypass, and this is the acknowledgement that Red Hat would like to thank Stefano Di Paola and Giorgio Fedon for responsibly reporting this issue. So the incredible thing is that I personally reported this issue back in 2010, and attackers are still exploiting this issue every day, targeting unpatched system. And this issue was very easy to fix because you just have to remove 2 lines of code per each JBoss configuration to secure the server. So incredibly, is still making damages after almost 6 years. Another important thing is that we discovered this issue almost in 2008, but Red Hat took almost 2 years to fix the issue because the most important payment system everywhere were using JBoss to process payments. Even the Apple Store was using JBoss behind their systems for handling payments. So this is a very short summary of some penetration testing modus operandi chain attack. So the attackers, starting by penetration testing internet servers, they have been using the penetrated server by using them as a source for stolen login credentials. And after getting the stolen login credential, they have been using those credentials for targeting other internal systems and install SAMSAM. FBI said that this is the first time that so sophisticated attacks in ransom took place. So sophisticated because attacks were been rising in terms of monetary ransom requests. Typically, small home users, small home ransomware are just a few $100s. If you have been hit by Cryptolocker, you know that you have to pay 1 Bitcoin or half of Bitcoin for having your information back up and running. With the SAMSAM or SAMAS, they are asking even up to $20,000 per incident. And FBI, in the worst scenario, was telling to the people to pay the ransom to have the information back up, with the promise of tracking and getting the attackers afterwards. Ransomware families are so many because the business is so profitable. You see that there was a Cryptolocker in 2013 with all the variants. For Cryptolocker, fortunately, there have been some ways to decrypt the files because Cryptolocker was connected to another gang operation that was called Zeus Game Over, that was a banking malware used to rob banks. And FBI, in conjunction with security expert companies, they have been able to take down their servers and getting the decryption keys directly from the servers of the internet gang. Unfortunately, for other ransomware, there is no way to decrypt the information, and the families are so many. There is CryptoWall, and this is the Cryptolocker Timeline, for example. Cryptolocker was not the first ransomware. We see ransomware up to 2005 and before. But what did it change since 2005? It changed the way that you can pay your ransom, because in 2009, Bitcoin was invented as a digital currency. With Bitcoin, it's easier for attackers to have the money converted in dollars without being able to be tracked. In 2012, we see other Trojans, and in 2014, 2015, and so on, there is a large number of families that are going to arise. We even see Vault Crypt, Tesla Crypt, or Ransom 32, the first ransom written in JavaScript, being offered as a ransom as a service. So the attacker is taking a percentage over the ransom itself. So he's doing all the job of writing the ransom, and they are renting their servers and their code to attack victims, taking a little percentage on all the ransom. So they are just the outsourcer of the technical operation and not the business customer relations. Yes, also the Bitcoins, yeah. So. But they can also ask for advance payments based on the number of the users that are targeted. So they pack of potential number of user targeted, because when they do, but we are going to see it afterwards, they do infection campaigns. Headline breaking news. This is somehow ironic because 23% of recipients now open phishing messages, and 11% click on attachments from Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report 2015. So users normally open attachments, 1 on 10 users are clicking on attachments. So this is the situation. So even worse, social engineering is working very well. Social engineering, you can see social engineering everywhere. For example, this is one of the mirrors of Casa Cinema, and to see any movie, you have to click around the page, and you can face pop-ups like this that ask you to install missing plugins on your browser. If you click on one of these, you are going to install malware without you are going to know that. The user is continuously asking for a solution, and a lot of people in the field say that antivirus is not the solution, but for the unfortunate user, there are not so many solutions because attackers are able to evade layered security in place. For example, in the Loki flow, in the Loki ransomware attack flow, they can evade multiple company defenses like IP reputation and content filter, antivirus check because they have a continuous update system for sending new attachments and different attachments. They bypass the web filter because they use new websites, because they send an email and they send a link inside the page. The user click on the link. On the link, the malware author knows how many users have clicked on the link. So if you step back to the ransom as a service, who is giving the ransom as a service knows how many users have been clicking on the links that the business operations center is sending, so they can charge the attacker from that. These are infection campaigns. They send a lot of email messages, but they can target also social network chat. Here you see a malware propagating by using Skype. Infecting website, malvertising. Malvertising is something that all online newspaper reader should know about, because malvertising is a technique of infecting users by poison the web advertisements that are shown on a website. Because advertisements are dynamic, they can contain executable code like JavaScript and other code like Flash action script. Malware author can put a malware inside that Flash or JavaScript and give it to the newspaper for displaying that ad. So they are paying a fee for having the ad to be displayed, or somehow they can hack the system that is displaying the advertisements. Because the most used advertisement system are open source, like OpenX, that is a broking system for displaying advertisements and know how much each customer should pay for his advertisement to be displayed. This is the effect of a virus sent as an attachment. Is, for example, your friend Federica that sends you a new message. This message is a very nice PowerPoint presentation to give you very amusing moments. Then you open it with your, and you see that it automatically was executing something in the background. In this case, it was just an example executing a calculator. But instead of the calculator, you could execute anything from any payload. So the attacker is just replacing the calculator with his ransomware, and after that you get all the files encrypted in just a couple of minutes. There is another prominent way for infecting a browser and web and computers, and are exploit kits. Exploit kits are a lot, and they are a way for installing magically on the computer that is visiting a website that is hosting that exploit kit, the malware. Exploitings are a lot, and this one of the most used in 2014, Black Hole Exploit Kit, and shows how many browsers have been successfully breaked and targeted by the exploits they are offering automatically. So they are exploiting JavaX, Java, SMB, PDF, Java, etc. So these are the exploits that are most successfully, and they are targeting, in this case, the Java plugin of the browser. Of course, they can also target 0 days. 0 days are vulnerabilities inside the browser for which there is not a specific patch already in place. If you remember, I was telling before that in the case of MedStar Hospital, they have been breached by using an old vulnerability. 0 day is not an old vulnerability. It's a new vulnerability by which the vendor has not issued a fix at the moment. Ransomware increasing tremendously. If you can block ransomware, of course you can block APT, because APT is even more sophisticated. US-based Ethiopian journalists have been targeted with the spyware, for example. Spyware is a kind of APT when it's used for very narrow and targeted targets. DEA and Pentagon spending millions on spyware. Ethiopia was hacking United States journalists with the commercial spyware. And this is an extract from Hacking Team manual that probably you already know about. It was the RCS control system, where you can see that governments that were using this malware could log calls from the cell phone, getting the messages of the users, having the keylog, mouse and password collected, getting screenshots from the camera, getting synchronization from online and cloud data, very easily deployed, and even getting the position of the users in real time or synchronizing, getting the time-based synchronization with the calendar of operations of the different action the user was doing, getting the voicemail and voice calls. But of course, the most challenging thing that malware author can do is to do bank robbery, because in the ancient age, you needed a gun to rob a bank. Now you don't need a gun. How banking malware attack work? They start by doing spam campaign infections, then they do keylogging, form grabbing, they collect data, they prepare for cache out, and after that they do caching out. There are a lot of malware for doing banking attacks. Even if they are a lot, are covering just 4% of the all malware families. They are also sold as with remote online support as a ticketing system. You see that, for example, for Citadel, they are writing that there are some bugs in the banking malware software that the malware author are using, and they're asked for a fix. This is an example of drop zones where information harvested from users for different banks are collected. This was, and this is the scratch card information for one user. The scratch card is the information you need to do authenticated operations like bank transfers, wire transfers, to other users. So they are collecting all this information to use the information afterwards. But when you have dynamic code, for example, the OTP one-time password that is continuously changing, could be even for the attackers challenging to do actions. So they invented the ATS, or automatic transaction systems. Automatic transaction systems are of different kind, and they are just swapping the information while you are doing your transaction. So the difference is that they are not interacting remotely with your machine. The malware has all the information it needs for swapping the recipient of the transaction. So instead of sending the money to user A, you are not figuring out that you are sending the money to user B, that is the attacker, without having any information that is, because it's swapping also the information that the user is seeing. And this is one of the backend controllers of the attackers for this automatic control system. Here is the transfer rule that instructs the malware to send the money to this account instead of the account that the user is using. So this is the mule configuration, because the attacker is not sending the information, the money directly to himself. He's sending the money to mules, because they have to clean the money before giving it back to the attacker. These are the connected customers, and these are the automatic transactions. Of course, they are also doing tandem attacks. So while you are moving to a bank and you are using SMS PIN, if you have the computer infected, the computer is telling you that you are missing some important software on your mobile devices for ending the transaction. So they ask you to download, or giving to them the mobile number where they can send you a link for downloading additional software for installing the mobile component that will be later used by the attacker to get all the SMS messages, because they are going like this to use social engineering by infecting your PC, using social engineering to make you infect by yourself this device by giving them your mobile phone. After that, they will send you an SMS with a link. You are clicking on the link, you are going to install an additional program that will send SMS messages to the attacker. In this way, attacker can get information on how to OTP.
Try to express myself. If the OTP limited the use of the code that you can use for your activity on your bank website, this kind of attack is limited to the time of the code that you receive from OTP.
Yes. Of course, it's working only on the time frame that OTP is working, but of course, since this operation can be partly automated, you get the message. Your mobile phone doesn't gives you that information, it sends you to the attacker. So the attacker receives all the SMS from the bank because they have infected your mobile device. And that malware is sending the SMS. This SMS will reach a specific service that will use usually Jabber. You know, Jabber is like an online chat service, like is a kind of WhatsApp or Telegram, but open source that many people are using, and they are building like call centers that are receiving the OTP for the user, and they perform the transaction. So the bank have been working on a lot of defenses for trying to protect themselves from this kind of threats, but is a cat and mouse game continuously, because you find a way, the attacker finds another way. A very interesting attack that is very simple, that is a lot used, is the IBAN swapping. That is memory-based swapping of the recipient, because instead of using a very complicated attack, the malware is continuously harvesting the memory of the machine, and if they find a matching ABAN code that is has been validated by the check, the IBAN check, because as a byte of can be checked by System 9, I think the name of the algorithm. But by the way, they can check if they find in memory one IBAN code, they can swap it, and in that way, when the user copy and paste, because what do you do with when you have to do a wire transfer? For example, you open an email or a file or the website where you read the IBAN code, you copy and you paste that information inside the bank page. When you are pasting, the malware is swapping the IBAN of the recipient. So when you are confirming the transaction, you are sending the money to someone else. Of course, it's organized crime, so they know how after that getting the money. Because of course, if you are usually sending a money for SEPA, for SEPA policies, if the name is not matching the ABAN, they should send back this information back to they should invalidate the wire transfer as sending back the money to the user that was performing the wire transfer. But of course, this depends on the bank that is doing the check. So they can choose the right bank for getting the information, or find a colleague inside the bank to have an additional help in validating that transactions. So thank you very much. Do you have questions? We have some minutes.
I have a very complicated one, so I hope we have time. It is because in Italy, you know, SPID is becoming a reality. The the state identity system issues. So more or less, a lot of people will have SPID credential. Level 1 is just a password. Level 2 is a password plus OLTP. Level 3 is some smart card, but no one issued right now level 3 credential. So faking the access is just a matter to use the same techniques that Zeus use.
Yes.
Because you infect the PC, after that you infect the smartphone, and the game is over. Having such a kind of compromising is very dangerous, because one is if they take all my money from my bank account. I have very little money on internet banking, so should be a problem, but not a big problem. But if they fake my universal identity, that should be a really big problem, because they use it on sites or services I don't know nothing, maybe in Equitalia site or my sanitary electronic storage and things like that. So OLTP compromising can be really dangerous in the near future. The only way that I see, and I don't know if there are different or it is not useful to not have OLTP compromised, because OLTP arrive via SMS, is to have a separate phone that is not smart and to receive OLTP there. In your opinion, there are strategy to attack such a kind of solution, or can be enough sure to use SPID level 2 in the future? Because in Italy it will be a problem.
Thank you, Marco, for the question. It is a very broad problem. I think that we are lucky to have some other example from where we can learn from. For example, in the United States, social security number is somehow the user identity, and they are facing similar issues when they are facing identity thefts from the user, where attackers are getting the social security numbers, and after that they can access all the user information, or even later applying for additional contracts and so on. So they were facing a lot of ways for trying to protect lost information. One of these was the parties that are breached need to disclose the fact that they have been breached, because one of the ways for contain a breach is to let the public to know that a breach has been configured and was made by the attackers. Because if nobody knows that a breach, so there are some political and government policies that should be also enforced to have some of the parties to be more alerted on this kind of problem. Talking about the technical remediations, I can say yes, that the most targeted phones were phones that were using specific operating systems. For example, Android mobile phones are the phones that actually are the most attacked mobile phones, but unfortunately are the most used mobile phones around people. So the compromise of using a dedicated phone is somehow could be expensive. On the other hand, there are attacks that works even against all the phones, and one of the most easy to do is the SIM swap attack. What is a SIM swap attack? Is an attack where you don't do the attack technically, but you ask a mobile phone shop operator, because they have the PC from the telecommunication companies, they can issue another SIM card. So if you have someone that is working for you, or you go to any shop from the telecommunication company and you say, oh, my nephew has a problem, she's abroad, she gave me the copy of the credit for the identity card, can you give me a copy of the SIM card of my auntie or my nephew? They give you a copy of the SIM card that is working. So it's the replacement SIM card, and this is the SIM card swapping attack. So is a problem on how the consumer-based mobile phones are provided. So it's a provisioning problem. This is why many banks prefer to have direct provisions of security device instead of using mobile phone provisioning, because you have to trust the provisioning system from the telecommunication provider. And this provisioning system can be dramatically flawed. Of course, when you have to do a targeted attack, it slows down the chain, because you have to ask for replacements from the SIM card and so on. It takes more time. But when you have important targets, or you can do that for important reasons, this is very common, unfortunately. Okay, thank you very much. We have run out of time. Thank you for your questions and interest.